A husband and wife noticed their neighbors hurriedly packing their belongings and rushing out of their houses. Perplexed, they stepped outside, only to see everyone on the street running as if the world were ending. Jason still couldn't figure out what was going on, but to be safe, he decided to take his family and leave town. However, on their way out, they witnessed something unusual. The same neighbors who had escaped were now returning. The situation grew even more unsettling. Jason's family began to panic, and soon they were caught in heavy traffic. That's when they realized the main exit from the city had been sealed by the military. Helicopters circled above, broadcasting that a sudden infection had broken out and that all residents were to return home immediately. Jason then understood that the city had been completely quarantined. Suddenly, a rock-like object plummeted from the sky, raising a massive cloud of dust. Moments later, 2 fighter jets roared overhead, heading straight for the town. Everyone froze in disbelief as explosions erupted in the distance. Beth, Jason's wife, grasped the horrible truth. If they had followed orders and gone home, they would have been doomed. The jets turned back toward the fleeing civilians. It was then that everyone finally realized the military wasn't rescuing them. They were wiping them out. Beth spotted a school on a nearby hill and urgently told her family to run there. The jets began a second round of bombing. But luckily, they escaped the blast just in time. Breathless and trembling, they reached the school and pounded desperately on the bunker door. As the deafening roar of planes grew closer, the heavy door finally shut behind them. What kind of infection could force the army to go to such extremes? Jason's family couldn't understand, but at least they had found shelter for now. Inside the bunker, they discovered expired canned food, barely enough for 3 people to survive for a while. But Beth's face turned pale. While shutting the door, she had cut her palm. What if she had already been infected? Still, there was no time to think about it. Jason locked the bunker door with iron chains and decided they would stay hidden for as long as needed. Life underground was harsh. Every day felt the same: tasteless canned food and muddy water drawn from an old well. To pass the time, they played cards and hide and seek. Separated from the world above, the family felt as though they were living at the end of time itself. Their daughter was the first to grow uneasy. "Papa, how long do we have to stay here?" she asked. Jason had no real answer. All he could say was, "When the virus is gone and the world heals, only then will we go outside." None of them imagined this wait would last 300 days. The little girl often peeked outside using a small mirror fixed to the ventilation duct, but every time she saw only a burnt, lifeless wasteland. Slowly, she began to believe they might be the last people left alive. Beth comforted her, saying maybe her friends were also hiding somewhere, just like them. One day, the girl opened a tin can and found it empty, a tiny hole punctured in the back. Something had taken the food. Beth checked the rest of their supplies and discovered 12 cans had been emptied, 2 weeks of rations gone. Devastated, she suspected that rats had crawled in through the ventilation duct. Seeing the sadness in his daughter's eyes, Jason comforted her, saying, "Don't worry about such little things. If the food runs out, I'll go outside and find more." That night, while the girl played quietly with her mother, a faint noise echoed from behind. A rat had sneaked in again, trying to snatch another can. Enraged, Jason grabbed a knife, ready to strike, but the creature was astonishingly quick, darting back toward the hole. Just as it was about to vanish, Beth lunged forward and caught it. But before they could react, a harsh burning smell filled the bunker. The rat had tipped over an oil lamp. The heat spiked instantly, and in moments, the lamp burst apart, spilling kerosene across the floor. The flames spread like lightning. Beth tore down a curtain and threw it over the fire, while Jason rushed to fetch water from a stone tap. After a frantic struggle, they finally managed to put the fire out. When they turned around, their daughter was hiding under the bed, staring at the mirror. Smoke was rising through the ventilation duct, threatening to expose their hiding spot. Jason whispered that maybe the cover of night would conceal the smoke. The 3 of them stayed awake, trembling in silence. Fortunately, nothing happened before dawn. The next morning, Jason checked the mirror and saw it darkened by soot. The smoke had escaped, but now a thick coat of ash surrounded the duct, which could actually help hide them. Still, They decided to clear it. Jason and Beth carefully unchained the bunker door, listened for any danger, and cautiously stepped outside, leaving their daughter behind. Time went by, but they didn't come back. Worried, the girl climbed onto a stool and looked through the reflector mirror. She saw her parents trying to disguise the bunker's entrance, but then, far off in the forest, a long black shadow slithered between the trees. Terrified, she screamed for her father to look behind him, but they were too far away to hear. Panic overwhelmed her, and she dashed outside. Yet when she reached the clearing, her parents had vanished. Shaking, she called out for them again and again. Suddenly, 2 hands grabbed her. It was Jason and Beth. They hurried her back inside and locked the bunker tight. Jason reinforced the door with wooden planks and heavy chains, then pressed his ear to the ground. Footsteps echoed above. Slow, heavy, searching. Something was out there, and it knew they were below. The girl began to sob, her small voice trembling. Beth quickly hushed her, whispering that even a sound could bring death. Jason tried to distract her until she quieted, but Beth's eyes stayed locked on the ventilation duct, her fear rising. Then, a violent crash rocked the bunker. The footsteps grew louder until they stopped right above them. Sweat trickled down Jason's face. Whatever was outside was now directly over their heads. A heavy blow struck the iron door, rattling the chains violently. It was clear the creature knew someone was inside. Each impact splintered the beams that held the frame together. The door wouldn't last long. Gathering her strength, Beth climbed the ladder and used her weight to press the door shut. But the lid slowly began to rise, and 2 glowing green eyes appeared in the darkness above. At that instant, Jason grabbed a steel pipe and wedged it into the doorframe, forcing it closed. The pressure from above suddenly eased, and the couple sealed the bunker once more. The footsteps faded after a while, but Jason's hands still trembled. He now realized the outside wasn't just filled with deadly soldiers. It was crawling with monstrous creatures, too. The family huddled together on the cold floor, drained and terrified. Their safe haven was no longer hidden. Another attack could come at any time, and soon enough the shelves began to shake, followed by the sound of dozens of footsteps above. Like a swarm, they descended and struck the bunker with full force. This time the iron door finally gave in. Countless glowing eyes peered into the darkness. Jason's family stumbled back in panic, but the creatures kept coming. Jason hurled the oil lamp and shoved a cabinet against the entrance, but it wouldn't hold for long. That's when their daughter noticed a narrow duct opening in the floor. Jason smashed the grate open, pushing his wife and daughter through the narrow hole. But when he tried to crawl in after them, his shoulders wedged tightly in the passage. The creatures were only seconds away. In desperation, Jason twisted his body and dislocated his arm, forcing himself free. Beth grabbed hold and pulled with all her strength, nearly dragging him out, when suddenly a massive clawed foot tore through the flames and clamped around him. Jason shouted for Beth to protect their daughter, just before being yanked back into the inferno below. Beth and her daughter sprinted down the cramped tunnel, Jason's screams echoing behind them. She knew in her heart he was buying them precious seconds with his own life. The 2 finally burst into the open air, only to be blinded by a powerful light. A helicopter's spotlight had locked on them, trapping them in its beam. Before they could move, a giant net fell from above, ensnaring them both. Through the thick mesh, Beth saw black figures with glowing green eyes approaching. But as they neared, she realized they weren't monsters at all. They were soldiers in hazmat suits. Without hesitation, the soldiers injected both mother and child with syringes. Black blood oozed from the punctures. "They're infected," the commander barked coldly, ordering his men to eliminate them. When the virus first appeared, it had already spread among countless townspeople. Airborne, invisible, and unstoppable, the military's only method of containment was total eradication. Beth watched in frozen horror as the soldiers raised their rifles toward her daughter. Rage consumed her. Dark veins crept across her face as something inside her began to awaken. But before she could strike, a sudden spray of blood erupted from a soldier's neck. Jason had returned, no longer human. His eyes glowed a deep, burning red. His strength was monstrous. He had turned after being infected. Jason tore through the soldiers like a storm, but the gunfire was relentless. Bullets ripped through him until he finally collapsed, gasping for breath. His sacrifice, however, gave Beth and her daughter a chance to escape the net. Amid the chaos, they fled as soldiers scattered to hunt them down. Unaware that Beth herself was changing, she tore through several soldiers in a frenzy before being hit and thrown onto the roof of a car. From the shadows, her daughter saw everything. Overcome with fury, the little girl's veins turned black as she lunged at a nearby soldier. But before she could kill him, Beth intervened. Even in her dying moments, she refused to let her daughter become a monster. Slowly, the child calmed, her veins fading back to normal. Yet the soldier she had attacked was already doomed. His torn suit had exposed him to the virus. Jason, bleeding and broken, looked at his daughter one final time and whispered a gentle goodbye before closing his eyes forever. Just then, another helicopter appeared overhead. Beth gathered her daughter in her arms and ran. They hid among piles of wreckage until they found a concealed underground path. A faint light revealed a small boy, their old neighbor, who guided them to a secret cellar filled with other survivors. Familiar faces, all hiding like ghosts beneath the earth. Countless people had been forced to live like this, burrowed away from the world, surviving day by day. Jason's family had spent every moment fleeing from monsters. Yet, in truth, to the uninfected, they were the monsters. And if you looked closely, you'd realize they had always known. That's why they warned their daughter never to lose her temper, because anger was the key that unleashed the transformation. And that, my friends, is where today's story ends. If you enjoyed it, stay tuned. We'll meet again in the next one.